Wow, guys, we have to dissect this, what happened in Iceland and what is still happening. There was this eruption, this short eruption, this fissure opening, that alone was already spectacular. But guys, have you ever seen an earthquake cluster like this? Never. I have seen that since I am reporting about this since November 10th, 2023, when the Reykjanes Peninsula, that part around Grindavik, Svartsengi, was waking up. And we know since 2021, it started with Fagradalsfjall, but a cluster like this, and if you look at the map, every green star, that's a higher magnitude earthquake. And the USGS has several above magnitude 5, and then many in the 4. And how clustered this is over the whole peninsula. And later on, I want to show you something with the earthquakes as well. It looks like there's magma still intruding underneath, as if it's like forming another dike, or making the existing dike longer, or filling it up with magma again. I mean, look at this. So we have in total, since this earthquake swarm, only in the last 48 hours, over 2,000 earthquakes, 2,106 earthquake, and 70 earthquakes greater than 3. That is massive. This is the 8th eruption, and with the past eruptions, if we had like a 2.7 or something, that was already like, whoa. Usually we see the 5s at Bardabunga, but in that massive number, and then size between 2 and 3, 506 earthquakes, and then between size 1 and 2, 947, and size less than 1, 583. And I think this has caused some more damage, unfortunately, in poor Grindavik. I think we will learn more, but this is mind-blowing, and it also creates a lot of uncertainty, because what's going on right now is very unusual, because the earthquakes are still happening. So we had that fissure that opened. We know that there have been 15 million cubic meters that were released from the magma chamber underneath Svartsengi, but that didn't all come out at that short eruption that was happening at Grindavik. So where is it going? And if we look at the earthquakes, we can see like a line forming. So is this getting closer to the main artery between the Keflavik airport and Reykjavik, the Reykjanes? That would be devastating if something happened there. Looks like in the Voga area, Fagradalsfjall again, Krýžovik. But if you look at the earthquake maps, there's also like the green stars in completely other areas, on other peninsulas, in the area north of Grindavik. So, and the Reykjanes Peninsula, this earthquake swarm looks more like the swarm we have seen, this like Easter egg swarm. This is what it looks, that it's forming on the western side of Iceland. Looks similar to Santorini. This is absolutely crazy. Of course, we see most of the green stars on the Reykjanes Peninsula here. And then if we look at the graph where we see all the dots, this is so densely clustered. This is absolutely insane. And since the earthquakes still keep coming, is there still something moving? What is happening? We know there was roughly 22 million cubic meters in the magma chamber underneath Svartsengi. And then usually when an eruption starts, it keeps being refilled from a deeper lying magma reservoir that lets the new magma flow through the shallower magma chamber and then right into the eruption site. So will the land rise again now that that thing in Grindavik has subsided somewhat? Or is it flowing somewhere else, filling up the other rest of this 15-kilometer long magma dike that has formed in November 2023? Is it filling that up and then coming to the surface at another area? Wow, guys, this volcano is always good for a surprise. Everyone was worried about Svartsengi, the power plant, the Blue Lagoon. Everyone was expecting that it erupts in the same area, and then they were very worried about a lava flow towards Svartsengi again. But I mean, now it's like, it doesn't care what's on top of it, right? The volcano doesn't care that there's a Grindavik defense wall on top of it. It opens the fissure underneath the defense wall, and boopsie, it's inside the defense wall. But Grindavik was so lucky that this was so short. Had this fissure been expanding like it usually does, they usually expand to the north, to the south, it would have gone probably into Grindavik. And then, had it lasted a day or 2 days, it would have filled up Grindavik, in my opinion. So that was like, whoa. I'm very sure when people saw that, they were like, that's it. The town is over. But no, the volcano is making it, I don't want to say interesting because it's really bad for the town of Grindavik, but it's building up tension. What is going on here? And what is going on in the other areas with the green stars? So is this because there's so much shaking and tension that this is traveling in the other areas? But would it then produce that many green stars so far north of the Reykjanes Peninsula? Crazy. Or is that the whole Western Iceland now saying, every volcano that's there, let's do something? I just hope not, and I don't think so, but it's definitely strange. And Freystein Sigmundsson, he's a geophysicist in Iceland. He has said something very interesting, because as soon as we have data that the land rise will start again, he says there will be a period of great uncertainty, because what does that mean? And he also says it is absolutely impossible right now to predict what is going to happen while we still have that fresh eruption that was just basically dying down, and while the seismic activity is still there. So he works for the Institute of Earth Sciences at the University of Iceland, and he is quite certain that we will see that the land rise underneath Svartsengi will resume after today's eruption. And guys, something really starts smelling here in my living room, like really burned. I just put my video on pause. It looks like someone is having a barbecue or something, but I couldn't find anything, and it basically only smells where I am sitting right now. So maybe my laptop will explode now, or my camera. I don't know, guys. I hope I'll be able to finish this video. It's really strange. But let's talk about Iceland again. I'm trying to concentrate. This smell is really making me a headache. What he thinks, what the most likely scenario is, and they have also discussed this before the current eruption, was a large eruption would happen and a short lead up. Basically, they're saying this is what happened today. But that was their theory. But in reality, that has turned out a little bit different, because today, definitely a magma tunnel has formed to be able to get to that eruption site, to open the fissure there. And that is playing an absolute important key role in what's going on. And that's why today's event was large, because it has produced this magma dike underneath. And that reminds us of November 10th in 2023. And that scenario has done the most damage to Grindavik. The fissures that opened has destroyed so many homes, foundations, tilted, cracked walls. That's why Grindavik basically had to be given up. Now they're slowly coming back, but I can't wait to hear what's going on in Grindavik. And they said this before this eruption, because repair work was being done. They said, many officials said, it's not the right time to start repairing Grindavik yet. And I guess they were right. This is massive. So what is this magma tunnel doing? And maybe it's not doing anything, and it's doing something in the next eruption, but it's definitely similar to November 2023. So in my opinion, the second most important event since everything began on November 2023. And by far right now, because the magma chamber has filled up so much until this happened, by far the largest amount of magma flowed, despite the fact that this was not a huge eruption. So this magma tunnel that has formed today is the second longest magma tunnel, according to the scientists, that has formed in this volcanic eruption cycle that began on November 10th, 2023, and it stretches about 20 kilometers. That is really long from end to end, and it's reaching way further north than ever seen before. As I said, this is a problem for the highway, Reykjanesbad. So is Vogar now at risk? Is Grindavik? Several towns now. This is really bad. But they think that the magma tunnel that has formed on November 23 was larger, maybe wider. So where is this magma coming from? We know that Iceland is being torn apart. Two tectonic plates are moving away from each other. And basically, these two plate boundaries that are moving away from each other, there are forces that make way for magma to come to the surface because it can open the Earth's crust. There's forces that can be unleashed. And Freistein said, quote, "I'm surprised. What surprised me today is how big this magma intrusion is, how big the magma chamber is." And what he thinks is, it seems that most of the magma that was moving today has settled inside the magma tunnel. Then the magma will solidify and harden and be a part of forming Iceland's land, Iceland's crust. So what will happen after today? It's almost impossible to give an estimate. He says that it's at least necessary to wait 2 to 3 weeks to assess whether the land rise will begin again. He thinks that we will start to see something when all this is ending now, once these earthquakes are ending and the magma intrusion is ending. And he thinks it's most likely that the magma inflow in that shallow magma chamber will continue. And he has an interesting theory. He thinks it is very possible that this magma intrusion has started on November 10th, 2023, and has never ever stopped since then. What? He said it has never actually stopped during the 15 months that this eruption cycle has been ongoing. So maybe there was constantly something flowing. So he thinks as soon as we see the land rising again, that's when a period of great uncertainty will begin. And he says, because many scientists say this was the final blow, this was the final eruption, now it will end for the Sudnuka crater series, and it will move somewhere else, maybe to Fagradalsfjall again, maybe to Eldwarp, maybe further north. And he says, we can't say whether that was the final blow or whether another eruption or something is needed to create that final blow, or the magma is going to move. They can't say. And then he speaks of Grindavik and he says, I understand that the people of Grindavik are very keen to begin to rebuilding their town. And he definitely understands their point of view, but he says we cannot declare the end of that cycle, of that story for Grindavik, unfortunately. We know that Benedict of Feiksson, he's the head of the deformation measurements at the Icelandic Met Office. He has predicted that this is the last one. Because overall, the rate with which the magma was refilling in the magma chamber has slowed down. And then it would be possible that if it's slowing down, that it's not building enough pressure for a new eruption. And that's the most desirable outcome for everyone in that area. But they don't know. That's why he says, period of uncertainty. And if you look at that map here, the Icelandic Met Office also says, right, look at that 20-kilometer long magma dike, and then look at the white line there. This is Reykjanesbát. So it can't be ruled out that there might be a fissure opening further north. And new cracks have already been reported on the road. That picture actually that you see here has been released by the RUV television station. They're not super big, but it's starting again. And last time in November 23, they got wider over time. So new damage, they have to reassess every house and everything after this. And they might have to look at Vogar as well, because there was is still high seismic activity in Vogar. And a resident of Vogar has given an interview, and she said that the seismic activity that they've been feeling today is way different than anything they have felt before in the past eruption that were happening in the Sudnuka crater series. So she said, I was watching it on TV and there was so much seismic activity, and I was sitting on the couch and there were constant tremors all the time. I thought that was a little strange, because usually when the eruption starts, the seismic activity stops right away because the pressure is being relieved. And she says, we haven't been experiencing much seismic activity until maybe recently in recent eruptions, but you always find it very uncomfortable. Your nervous system goes haywire. Of course, I believe that. So the Met Office has now confirmed that the largest earthquake that happened was magnitude 5.3. They think that the earthquake swarm that we see here, that everything is related to that magma intrusion in the Sudnuka crater series. And that is crazy. It hasn't been like this on November 23. And then they had this large earthquake in Efstaleit, Borganes, Selfoss, and Akranes. They have never been impacted by this. And that's why, for example, geophysicist Magnus Tumi Gudmundsson has said today, when we look at all the events, all the earthquakes, everything that's happening, that little eruption fissure there is almost the secondary issue today. The main issue is that magma intrusion, that magma dike that is forming and expanding north. And he also says, this eruption, this intrusion came a little bit as a surprise, but nature is in control. And then there is something strange that must have happened during the evacuation of Grindavik. Rescue workers were threatened with a shotgun, it seems. The Minister of Justice says it's completely intolerable that people would behave in a threatening manner towards people who are working to ensure the safety of residents. So it seems these rescue workers didn't want to leave, and then they were threatened with a gun that they would leave. I hope we will hear more about this. So while magma is still flowing into that magma dike, there is a risk that the eruption that was happening in Grindavik could resume, or that magma could resume or resurface elsewhere. They have also sent magma in for chemical analysis, and that's going to be very interesting, so that we can see where is this magma coming from. So what a scenario. They were also seeing steam coming from some residences in Grindavik, but that was not a fissure that opened. That was basically a damaged hot water pipe from the eruptions, and that's why steam was seen. And then there is another risk. If that magma tunnel keeps refilling, magma could flow through the cracks that are everywhere in Grindavik. So it could, maybe that's the reason why this fissure that opened in Grindavik was only so short-lived. Maybe it's filling up all this Swiss cheese underneath Grindavik, and then it could emerge all of a sudden as an oopsie inside of Grindavik. So it remains interesting, guys. I will keep you updated. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave it a like and share it with your friends. If you're new here, subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description of this video. I have a buymeacoffee.com/silky site, like this stuff here that keeps me going. You can support me there. Link is in the description of this video. And thanks so much, guys. If you want to join as a supporting channel member, like with a monthly membership, you can do that by clicking the join button or the link in the description, and you're getting videos from me for that, what's going on behind the scenes and my private life. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope I see you very, very soon. Stay safe.